When someone falls in love, they don't realize whether they're old or young. A 60-year-old man falls in love with a young woman, and what they do to be together is what this story is all about. The movie opens with Vanessa's first day at college. She's looking for her classroom and soon finds it. Inside, Professor David is teaching. He's a brilliant lecturer, but his mind is always filled with explosive, wild ideas. While teaching, he can't take his eyes off Vanessa, though he keeps going with his lesson. Vanessa, too, is impressed by his unique teaching style. David had been keeping his distance from female students lately, ever since the college banned relationships between professors and students. Vanessa, young and stunningly beautiful, caught his attention instantly. After class, several students approached David to talk, but his eyes were on Vanessa, who was standing alone in a corner. Unable to resist, he walked up to her and asked what she was doing there. Vanessa replied that she was just looking at a chart. Then she suddenly asked, "Do you play the piano, Professor?" David immediately said yes. Not only did he play, he had taught many others as well. As they talked, David started complimenting her and asking about her life. Smiling softly, Vanessa said she had joined the college because her father wanted her to. Hearing this, David was already falling for her. When he showed her a book, he could feel how close she was, and that nearness made his heart race. David was quite famous. His interviews often aired on TV. In one such interview, he admitted that he had never truly fallen in love. He said he had only gotten married to calm his heat, which was why the marriage ended quickly. A few days later, David hosted a house party for students who were about to graduate. Vanessa was there too. Everyone was enjoying themselves, but David's eyes kept finding her in the crowd. There was something about her that pulled him in. Seizing the moment, he approached her and struck up a conversation. His charm and wit impressed Vanessa, and she began to enjoy his company. The two ended up sitting on the stairs, talking for hours. The next day, David was with his closest friend, telling him everything. He confessed that he was attracted to Vanessa and just wanted to have some fun with her. But then he added, "There's something different about this girl. I've never met anyone like her." Later, David visited Sheen, a woman he was having an affair with. Whenever he felt like it, he'd go see her. Sheen didn't know that David had been involved with many women before her. David believed in living freely and doing whatever pleased him. That's also why he rarely saw his son, Ronnie. The following evening, David went to a theater play with Vanessa. While Vanessa was fully absorbed in the performance, David couldn't take his eyes off her. His focus was entirely on her. After watching the play, when the two stepped outside, he invited Vanessa to his home for dinner. In truth, he had planned to invite her over under the pretext of teaching her piano lessons, so Vanessa couldn't refuse. After that, he brought her to his house. At her request, he began to play the piano. As the professor played, Vanessa listened carefully to the sound of his music. Somewhere deep down, she too couldn't stop herself from being drawn toward him. When she couldn't resist anymore, she came and sat beside him, watching him closely. After a while, Vanessa said that she also wanted to learn how to play the piano. Looking at them, it was clear that they were getting closer to each other. A little later, the professor began showing Vanessa around his house. As he did, he gradually moved closer to her, and Vanessa didn't stop him. Their eyes said everything. There was no need for words. Soon, the atmosphere became so intense that passion took over between them. A few days later, the professor met his friend and told him everything about the time he had spent with Vanessa. His friend tried to make him understand that he was around 60, while Vanessa was not even 30, and that he shouldn't continue the relationship. But the professor and Vanessa had already grown too close to part ways. The professor enjoyed her company immensely. He would talk to her all the time. Seeing this, his friend said, "You've changed." The professor denied it, but deep down, he knew that Vanessa's presence had indeed changed him. He constantly feared that some young man might take Vanessa away from him. That's why whenever he thought of her, he would rush to be by her side. After meeting his friend, the professor returned home, where Vanessa was already waiting for him. Seeing his condition, his friend had advised him to stay away from Vanessa. He warned, "The day Vanessa falls in love with someone her own age, she'll leave you, and you won't be able to bear that pain." Taking his friend's advice, the professor decided to end things with Vanessa. But the moment he saw her again, he forgot everything. He became so lost in her words that he couldn't bring himself to break up. The once free-spirited professor had now fallen deeply in love with Vanessa, and she loved him just as much. Instead of ending, their bond grew even stronger. But along with that, the professor's fear also began to grow. Whenever Vanessa wasn't with him, he would imagine her in someone else's arms. Vanessa knew about his insecurities. She often reassured him, saying, "I love only you." But the professor couldn't control his suspicions. Because of this fear, he started keeping an eye on Vanessa. One day, Vanessa was out with her friends, and as soon as she noticed the professor watching her, she got angry. She wanted him to trust her, but that was difficult for the professor. He had never behaved like this before. Later, when he told his friend that he couldn't stay away from Vanessa, his friend made fun of him. The next day, when the professor met Vanessa, she told him that she was going to Europe with her family for a few days. Hearing this, the professor became a little sad. He told her that he would miss her a lot while she was gone, and that he would wait for her to return. The professor asked her to have dinner with him that evening, but Vanessa refused because she was leaving soon. When he was dropping her off, he jokingly said, "Don't get a boyfriend over there." Vanessa felt strange hearing that, but the professor quickly said he was only joking. That night, the professor was in his room, missing Vanessa terribly. He couldn't stop thinking that she might be with someone else. Unable to resist, he went to her address and saw her with another guy. Before anything could happen, Vanessa came over and asked what he was doing there. The professor made up an excuse that he was visiting a friend, but in truth, he had come to check on her. Vanessa realized the old man had been watching her. She got angry and asked what he really wanted from her. She told him to stop following her like that. She said, "I never doubted you, but look at what you're doing." Seeing the situation getting worse, the professor admitted that the big age gap between them scared him. He feared she would one day leave him for someone else. Vanessa calmed him down and assured him that would never happen. The professor understood and felt relieved. When he later told his friend about it, his friend laughed again, but the professor admitted that it was his own fault for doubting Vanessa. As time went by, their relationship grew stronger. They were very happy together, but deep inside, the professor still had the feeling that Vanessa might be seeing someone else. When he finally asked her about it, Vanessa said, "Why would you think that? There's nothing going on." The professor's fear still lingered, especially now that he had started to feel his age. To ease his doubts, Vanessa came over that night and spent the night with him. That same morning, Sheen went to the professor's house to find out why. She asked him why he hadn't been visiting her lately, but the professor made up an excuse. Just then, Sheen got a work call and stepped outside. Unaware of all this, Vanessa came and sat next to the professor. She had no idea that because of her, Sheen was about to lash out at him. When Sheen came back, she saw Vanessa there and immediately realized who she was. Knowing the truth, Sheen angrily confronted the professor, calling him names and telling him to stay away from Vanessa. The professor tried to mislead her by saying that Vanessa was his friend's daughter, but Sheen wasn't fooled. She knew this old man was lying. Finally, he confessed that he had fallen in love with Vanessa and that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stay away from her. Yet he didn't want to leave Sheen either. Even though the professor was very happy with Vanessa, he still continued to meet Sheen from time to time. As time went on, a year passed in Vanessa and the professor's relationship. One day, Vanessa told him that her family knew about them and wanted to meet him. At first, the professor refused, but when he saw how sad Vanessa was, he agreed to meet her family. Vanessa told him that she wanted to marry him. Hearing this, Professor David was overjoyed, almost crazy with happiness. Vanessa told him that there would be a party at her house the next day and that he should come meet her family. The professor hesitated, saying people would talk if they saw him there, but Vanessa didn't care. She just wanted him to meet her parents. He finally agreed, but later confided in his friend that he was worried Vanessa's family and relatives would judge him because of his age. The next day, the party was in full swing at Vanessa's house. Everyone was eager to meet the professor. He got dressed and went to her house, but he couldn't bring himself to go inside. He called Vanessa, made up an excuse, and apologized for not coming. Vanessa knew him too well. She could tell he was lying. She wanted to introduce him to her parents and take their relationship to the next level, but his lie broke her heart. A little while later, when the professor came home, he received a message from Vanessa in which she, crying, broke up with him. Vanessa loved the professor deeply, and the professor loved her just as much, but he couldn't be there for her. Her leaving completely shattered him, and Vanessa, through her tears, realized that the professor had only used her. One night, his son Ronnie came to see him. Ronnie's married life wasn't going well. He had come to talk to his father, but Marino had no advice to give him. Ronnie needed his father's love and guidance, which he had never received before. He became sad and said that it was his father's responsibility to help his son out of trouble because he was a professor and should know the way out of such situations. But the professor told Ronnie that he couldn't help him because he himself had never lived a proper married life. Hearing this, Ronnie left, disappointed. After Vanessa left, the professor's heart was completely completely broken. He had almost stopped eating and drinking. His friend George tried to console him, saying, "You're a professor. If you do this to yourself, how will you go on? Move on and live your life. Forget Vanessa." Hearing this, the professor laughed. But what could he do? He couldn't stop thinking about Vanessa. George told him that even though he was so sick, he was still happy. And here his friend was so sad over a woman. Finally, inspired by his friend's words, Professor David decided to go to his college. That day, he gave a beautiful speech, and everyone there was happy. George was also sitting there listening to the speech, and he felt proud of his friend David. But while Professor David was giving his speech, George suddenly fell ill and had to be carried home. When they reached home, Sheen was also very upset, as were George's wife and David. The professor went to George and said, "Don't worry, I'm here. You'll be fine." But George knew that he could no longer get better. At night, the professor comforted George's wife, assuring her that George would recover soon. The next day, the professor met his son and gave him advice. His son was still crying. David had to visit George, so he left quickly. Meanwhile, one day he meets Sheen and starts telling her about Vanessa. They had been friends for 20 years, but this was the first time they were talking so openly with each other. Sheen was extremely happy. David, who had always kept himself young and fit, had now accepted his old age. He was trying to forget Vanessa in every possible way, but it wasn't easy. In the professor's life, there was no longer Vanessa, nor was there his close friend, because suddenly, due to a seizure, she had passed away. To cope with his memories, he started focusing on his work. Afterwards, the professor brings Sheen to his home, where he tells her that he no longer has the desire to live. Sheen too begins to share her sorrow and starts crying, explaining how her husband had left her. After Sheen leaves, the professor's world seems completely shattered, but one day he gathers the courage to move forward. Even today, there's no shortage of beautiful girls in his class, but he no longer feels attracted to them. One day, when he returned home from college, he received a message from Vanessa. She said that she needed his help. Hearing this, David asked her what was wrong. Vanessa wanted to come and explain everything in person. Still, he called the number she provided, and soon Vanessa came to meet him. When Vanessa saw him, she became very sad because the professor had told her that he couldn't live without her. But in reality, Vanessa revealed that she was ill. She had consulted many doctors about her illness, but none of them could help, so she had stayed away from him. Hearing this, the professor started crying and said, "You never told me. Do you know how worried I was about you?" Vanessa explained that even after staying away from him, she had not had a boyfriend. Vanessa apologized to David and he forgave her. He then told her that he would make sure she got better. He invited her to stay at his house that night and she stayed with him. Marino too began listening to everything he said. He was worried about Vanessa, so the next day he met his son, Ronnie, who is a famous doctor. After talking to Vanessa's doctor, Ronnie found out that the surgery was not 2 weeks away, but was scheduled for the next day. For the first time, Ronnie saw Marino care for someone, and he was happy for him. Ronnie finally got the love from his father that he had been longing for all these years. The next day, Vanessa's surgery took place, with Marino taking care of her. Vanessa had feared that Marino would leave her because she no longer looked as beautiful as before, but Marino reassured her, saying, "You are still incredibly beautiful today." At the end of the story, they promised to live together again, and with that, the story concludes. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you love videos like this, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. We'll meet in the next video. Until then, goodbye.